This past week, probably 2 weeks or so, there has been a lot of news coverage of everything that's going on in Baltimore. And there's been a lot of news coverage about things that happened at first. And it's in our lives. We see it on the TV. Our kids are probably wondering what's going on, what's happening, why is this happening, and so forth. And there's been a lot of debate even on Facebook, and I've heard things like Facebook is the devil, and it probably is. But the point is that there's debate out there between brothers and sisters of Christ that it just kind of makes you step back and wonder for a minute. You know, recently, a lot of times I would always, anytime a situation would come up in life, I would always try to follow the pattern that has been, that I've learned from, since for 20 years now about how we're supposed to, get authority when it comes to the Scriptures as far as what we're supposed to do in all situations. So naturally we have our little method that we get to, but then I stopped and I started thinking about it. The apostolic example, the direct command and the necessary inference and so forth. I just stopped and thought about that, and Doug and I have talked about this. Is this really something that Christ came up with, or is this something that man came up with? So then I stopped and thought about it some more. I said, okay, if Christ were here today, what would he do? How would he handle situations like what we're seeing on TV? And keep in mind, every news channel and every Facebook page is tainted with liberal and conservative, and you see what they want you to see. So taking all that, with a grain of salt. What it did is it kind of made me realize, Christ never once saw a skin color. Not once. But in fact, what Christ was dealing with on a daily basis was believers and non-believers. Didn't matter who you were, didn't matter where you came from, didn't matter what color you were. It mattered the condition of your heart. So what that does is, or what it did is it kind of made me think of this. It's just a short little story about Christ, his mother, and his brothers, and the time that they sent for him. And this is can be found in Matthew chapter 12, starting in verse 46. This is what it says. While he was still talking to the multitudes, because he did a lot of teaching, behold, his mother and brothers stood outside seeking to speak with him. And then one said to him, look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside seeking to speak with you. And then this question that he posed, it threw me off at first, because, well, we'll see here in just a minute. He answered and he said to the one who told him, who is my mother and who are my brothers? Well, naturally, we would think in our carnal way of thinking, we would say the family that we grew up with, that's our mother and our brothers. Well, Christ he was thinking of a whole lot bigger picture here. He stretched out his hand toward his disciples and said, here are my mother and my brothers. And then he caps it off with for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. And that's how Christ thought on a daily basis. He who puts God first, the one whose heart is right with God, that is my brother. That is my sister. That is my mother. Those are the ones that I want to spend my time with. Those are the ones that I need as much as they need me. And nothing has changed today. When we ask ourselves, how would Jesus handle things? He would do it the same way. What condition is your heart? Forget about all the reasons why things happen and why the things we see today have happened. What condition is your heart? Let's start there, and then we'll get to that. Because all that's going to be there when we're done. What condition is your heart? He said, whoever does the will of my Father in heaven. That means that our Father, his Father, has a will that needs to be obeyed, needs to be followed through with, needs to be heard, needs to be taught, so that others can obey. Jesus was very clear. He was very, he was open. There was no secrets to him. He was the Son of God. And this isn't the first time, over in Matthew. Again, he said that anyone that does the will of my Father, anyone that does the will of my Father, that's the one that I'm going to confess to my Father in heaven. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things I say? You know, Jesus would make these statements over and over again to people that he thought were listening, or he probably knew they weren't listening. They were listening more with their mouth than they were with their ears, waiting for their turn to say something next. You know, it was just one of those things. Christ knew their hearts. That's why he focused on their hearts so much. All he wanted to do was to get people to stop and think about the change, that they needed to make a change. Things weren't going, you know, they were moving from that Old Testament, that old law of Moses, to the new, and he was trying to get them to that point. It's not supposed to be like this anymore. That's been fulfilled, and now we have this. Christ is our example. So when we think about, you know, how we're supposed to do things today, let's begin by just simply being like Christ. We talk about being Christ-like, but what was he really like? Well, we can find out if we open up his word, and we can read the things that he answered and the questions that he was asked and how he answered them in the situations he was put in. We can read of his suffering. We can read of his, you know, his feeling the pain of the whips and the nails and everything. We can read about the love that he showed. And even on the cross, he was concerned about the heart of the man next to him. The man next to him knew that he was the Son of God. And because he recognized that, he said, I'll see you in heaven. What an awesome thing for the Son of God to say to you. Well done, good and faithful servant. But it all starts with obedience. It all starts with this right here, doing the will of his Father in heaven. So have you done the Father's will? Have you stopped and asked yourself, am I being like Christ? Starting off with being buried with him in baptism. Christ was perfect. He didn't know sin. And he wants, you know, he died to remove your sin. That's the starting point. If you're ready to have your sin removed, if you're ready to do the Father's will, this is an opportunity for you to start fresh. This is an opportunity to begin. This is an opportunity to be a brother or sister to Christ. If you're here tonight and you want to find the power in the blood, which is the song that we're going to be singing tonight, this is your chance. Don't waste it. If you're here tonight and there's anything we can do, we invite you to come together while we stand and sing.